You've been praised for betraying yourself. Every compliment you've ever received for being so agreeable, so well-behaved, or so patient was not a recognition of your strength. It was a reward for your submission. The world didn't cheer for your authenticity. It clapped when you folded. We are told that self-control is maturity, that biting your tongue is wise, that going along with others is noble. But this is a lie, or worse, a trap. Because what you've been taught to admire is not real strength. It's the polished, acceptable version of you. One that doesn't disturb anyone, doesn't disrupt the order, and certainly doesn't challenge the system that feeds off your silence. The brutal truth is this: you were never meant to be powerful. You were shaped to be useful. And usefulness in the modern world is not about talent or vision. It's about predictability. A predictable worker, a predictable spouse, a predictable citizen. You're easier to manage when you suppress the parts of you that feel too much, want too much, or question too deeply. What you call discipline may actually be internalized fear. Fear of disappointing others, fear of confrontation, fear of rejection. So you learn to be quiet. You learn to play the part. You wore masks so convincingly that you started believing they were your face. This isn't an accident. It's by design. Society trains you to behave this way. From childhood, the rewards come when you're polite, obedient, and under control. The punishments come when you express anger, demand space, or show defiance. So what happens? You begin to amputate your desires. You learn to smile through discomfort. You take pride in being unproblematic. And in doing so, you become less dangerous and less alive. But make no mistake, this is not peace. It's pacification. And pacification is not freedom. It's control. This essay is not for the soft-hearted. It's for those who suspect that something has been taken from them, slowly, subtly, and with applause. It's for those who've looked in the mirror and seen a stranger looking back. It's for those who are tired of getting good at being someone they're not. We're going to tear down the illusion. We're going to expose the machinery. We're going to dissect how power structures, from ancient China to your modern workplace, reward the suppression of the individual. And we will do it through the lens of one of the most feared and misunderstood philosophers in history, Han Feizi. He didn't preach kindness or inner peace. He preached control, structure, and fear. But in his brutal philosophy, we can find a mirror that shows us not who we wish we were, but what we've allowed ourselves to become. This will not be comfortable. It's not supposed to be. Comfort is the currency of the powerless. If you want to reclaim yourself, you'll need to abandon what made you acceptable. Ready? Good. Because the person you've been pretending to be is about to die. Imagine yourself as a fortress. Not a cottage, not a tent. A fortress. With thick stone walls, narrow windows, and gates that don't open easily. A fortress doesn't apologize for its structure. It's not designed for hospitality. It's designed for defense, for power, for control over what enters and exits. But somewhere along the way, you were convinced to dismantle your walls, brick by brick. They told you that vulnerability was strength, that openness would bring connection, that compliance would bring peace. What they didn't tell you was that while you made yourself soft and exposed, others were building towers around you. Han Feizi understood this before the modern world even existed. Living in the chaos of the Warring States period in ancient China, he saw firsthand how kindness, trust, and emotional openness could be fatal. He wasn't interested in building harmonious societies or awakening inner joy. He was interested in maintaining order, through control, through fear, through structure. To Han Feizi, the world was not a community. It was a battlefield. And on a battlefield, sentiment is a weakness. Predictability is a strength. Control over others, and over oneself, is not optional. It's survival. He believed that people are driven by two forces, reward and punishment, not by ethics, not by internal virtue, and certainly not by love. You shape behavior by designing systems. Systems where certain actions bring pleasure and others bring pain. That's it. He called this Fa, law, standard, regulation, not morality, mechanism. So when you find yourself being praised for being so accommodating or so easy to work with, ask yourself, what is actually being rewarded? Is it your insight, your authenticity, or is it your ability to suppress discomfort, to keep the peace, to make others feel unchallenged. That's the trap Han Feizi would have seen with terrifying clarity. Your suppression is being reinforced by the system, because a suppressed individual is predictable, and a predictable individual is easy to manage, just like a soldier who marches without asking why. But here's the brutal part, and what makes Han Feizi so dangerous to modern sensibilities. He didn't blame the system for being cruel. He believed cruelty was necessary. He didn't see manipulation as corruption. He saw it as the core of governance. Because if you wait for people to act out of goodness, you'll be overthrown by those who understand power. And here's where his mirror gets especially uncomfortable. Most modern institutions operate exactly as Han Feizi prescribed. Schools don't cultivate genius, they train compliance. Workplaces don't reward innovation, they reward obedience. Families don't always nurture freedom, they often enforce silence. You've been shaped not to become a fortress, but a servant. And the most brutal part of all, you were taught to thank them for it. You were never told to build a fortress. You were taught to decorate your cage. Instead of strength, you were taught politeness. Instead of strategy, you were taught morality. Instead of fortification, you were taught surrender, dressed up as virtue. Every time you were told to be nice, let it go, or don't make it a big deal, another brick in your internal fortress was replaced with glass, see-through, fragile, easily shattered. And here's the horrifying part. They didn't have to destroy your power. They just had to convince you it was dangerous to keep it. Han Feizi didn't believe in the moral superiority of the individual. He believed in systems. He believed people respond to incentives, not ideals. He didn't ask what people should do. He asked what they actually do when no one's watching. That's what made him dangerous, and why he was feared by Confucians who preached harmony, benevolence, and moral cultivation. Because harmony is beautiful, until you realize it requires silence. Benevolence sounds noble, until you're the one being devoured by those who refuse to play nice. Han Feizi rejected the idea that people are inherently good, and that belief changes everything. Because if people aren't naturally virtuous, then systems that rely on their goodness will fail. So instead, you must create systems where good behavior is the path of least resistance, not the product of good character. This is the machinery behind the modern world. When you suppress yourself, your anger, your intensity, your instincts, it's not because you're mature. It's because you've been placed inside a system that rewards predictable behavior and punishes disruption. And over time, that system becomes invisible to you. It doesn't feel like oppression. It feels like being a good person. This is the genius and the horror of effective control. They don't need to chain you if they can train you to chain yourself. You apologize for being too intense, for being too direct, for asking too much. But these are not flaws. They are indicators of a self that still wants to breathe. You're not too much. You're just too unsuppressed for a system that thrives on docility. And the most tragic part is that you've begun to reward others the same way. You feel safer around those who suppress themselves. You prefer friends who don't challenge you. You reward politeness over honesty, compliance over creativity, likability over depth. You've become a distributor of the same currency that deformed you. This is not because you are evil. It's because the system worked. Han Feizi would nod in recognition. The people are ruled, not by force, but by design. They are not coerced into silence. They are conditioned to believe that silence is goodness, but the fortress still exists inside you. Beneath the rubble of niceness and shame and politeness and fear, there are still stones waiting to be rebuilt. It won't happen by accident, and it won't happen through inspiration. It will require strategy. It will require defiance. It will require you to stop being likable and start being formidable. And the first act of rebellion is simple. Stop apologizing for your strength. You don't need to look far to see the system at work. It's in your everyday interactions. At work, you stay silent in meetings even when you disagree, because you've learned that speaking up makes you difficult. You nod along with bad decisions to protect your image. You get praise not for your ideas, but for being easy to work with. Translation: you don't threaten the power structure. In relationships, you downplay your needs. You avoid conflict. You think being a good partner means absorbing discomfort quietly. You smile through irritation. You say, "It's fine," when it isn't. You call it maturity. But what it really is learned invisibility. In friendships, You hesitate to say what you really think. You filter, you shrink. You choose approval over truth. You withhold your full presence because you don't want to be too intense, too negative, too much. And society applauds you for it. People say, "You're so emotionally intelligent," when what they really mean is, "You've mastered the art of making yourself small enough to be liked." They say, "You're so humble," when what they see is someone who won't challenge them. They reward the erosion of your voice with acceptance, and you take it because no one taught you the price. But the cost is steep: a life of soft resentment, low-grade anxiety, and chronic disconnection from yourself. A life where you succeed at being inoffensive and fail at being alive. You don't need more motivation. You need deprogramming. The truth is, the more useful you are to others, the more likely it is that you've betrayed yourself, and the world will never tell you to stop, because it benefits from your suppression. You will have to be the one to end it. Modern self-help tells you to love yourself, to be more positive, to set boundaries, but it forgets to mention one thing. All of that is useless if you're still addicted to being liked. You've read the books, you've journaled, you've made vision boards, and yet, when the moment comes, the meeting, the argument, the pressure, you fold. Not because you're lazy, but because the conventional model of self-growth is built on a fatal flaw. It tries to heal you without threatening the system that broke you. It teaches you to speak your truth, but politely, to take up space, but not too much, to be authentic, as long as it's still marketable. That's not transformation. That's repackaged conformity. These approaches fail because they don't confront the real machinery behind your suppression, the reward-punishment loop. Han Feizi would say that trying to overcome your patterns with self-love is like trying to stop a war with poetry. The system that trained you to betray yourself is not emotional, it's structural. And structures don't collapse because you journaled about your feelings. They collapse when you act against their incentives. If your job rewards silence, you must be willing to risk discomfort. If your family rewards docility, you must be willing to disappoint. If your partner rewards self-abandonment, you must be willing to rupture the dynamic or leave. Self-help that doesn't teach confrontation is just another form of sedation. It calms you down when you should be waking up. The truth is brutal. You don't need more affirmations. You need strategy. You need the will to be disapproved of and the discipline to survive it. Only then can your fortress begin to rise. You cannot think your way out of self-suppression. You must train it out of your body. Strategy, not sentiment. Structure, not inspiration. Here's the brutal architecture of rebuilding yourself. A step-by-step shift from servitude to sovereignty. Step 1. Audit your compliance. Track where you shrink. Every time you say yes when you meant no. Every time you bite your tongue. Every time you feel resentment but smile anyway. Write it down. Make the invisible visible. Patterns don't break until they're named. Step 2. Interrupt the reward loop. Deliberately do what you fear will make you unlikable. Speak when it's uncomfortable. Say no without explanation. Let someone be disappointed in you. And don't soothe it. This is exposure therapy for the conditioned self. Disruption is your medicine. Step 3. Define your inner law. Han Feizi taught that external laws shape people's behavior. But now, you build your own code. What behaviors are non-negotiable for the version of you who owns their power? Write these rules. Keep them visible. Govern yourself like a sovereign, not a servant. Step 4. Practice strategic withdrawal. Remove yourself from environments that depend on your submission. Not all battles must be fought. Some must be walked away from. Distance is power. Starve the system of your obedience. Step 5. Harden your self-respect. Self-respect is not a feeling, it's a muscle. Every time you act in alignment with your truth, especially when it costs you, you make it stronger. Repetition is what turns identity into instinct. The world will not cheer as you change. It will resist. But remember, fortresses are not built for applause. They're built to last. In the philosophy of power, there is a brutal tension between virtù and fortuna, human agency versus uncontrollable chaos. Niccolò Machiavelli described this centuries after Han Feizi, but the principle echoes the same truth. Strength is not given. It is seized, and it must be defended against everything that seeks to dissolve it. Fortuna is the storm, the unpredictable boss, the manipulative partner, the family guilt, The societal pressure, the algorithm, the economy. It is everything outside of you that rewards your silence and punishes your truth. And you've been taught to cope with it by adjusting yourself, smoothing your edges, becoming flexible, becoming agreeable. But Han Feizi, like Machiavelli, would call that surrender. To them, power does not come from hoping the world becomes fair. It comes from designing yourself to withstand its unfairness. That's virtù, the strategic force of will that resists being shaped by the chaos outside. When you suppress yourself, you surrender virtù to fortuna. You become a reed in the wind, not the architect of your own position. The system rewards you for it, not out of kindness, but because it ensures your compliance. Reclaiming virtù means accepting that discomfort is not a glitch. It's the cost of sovereignty. You must become indifferent to approval, immune to guilt, and intolerant of manipulation. Not because you want to dominate others, but because you refuse to be molded by them. You will be tested. You will lose people. You will make others uncomfortable. But each time you choose principle over peace, you step closer to power. Real power, not the one gifted by others, but the kind no one can take away. Because only the fortress can stand when the storm arrives. The moment you begin to rise, the world will respond. Not with applause, but with pressure. People will question your shift. Some will guilt you. Others will mock your seriousness. Systems you once flowed through easily, your job, your relationships, your family, will now resist you like a virus. Why? Because a fortress in the middle of a compliant village is a threat. So how do you hold the line? How do you stay sharp when the forces around you want to dull you again? Tactic 1. Build a shielded identity. Stop seeing yourself as someone becoming strong. Start seeing yourself as someone who is already dangerous, but refining your discipline. This shift is subtle, but it matters. You're not trying to earn power. You're reclaiming what was stolen. Tactic 2. Strategic emotional detachment. You must learn to observe others without absorbing them. When someone reacts emotionally to your new strength, treat it like weather, not prophecy. Let people have their storms. Your job is not to regulate their skies. Tactic 3. Code over mood. Han Feizi did not trust emotions. Neither should you when building resilience. You follow your code, your internal law, regardless of how you feel. Discipline is not intensity. It is repetition, in defiance of comfort. Tactic 4. Silent warfare. Not every battle needs an announcement. Some of your most powerful rebellions will be invisible. A no that never needs defending. A boundary that doesn't require explanation. Power is most lethal when it is quiet. Tactic 5. Endure the exile. You may lose proximity to others, but you'll gain proximity to yourself. The fortress gets lonely before it becomes sovereign. Don't flinch. Don't retreat. Hold. Because in the end, those who rule themselves rule everything. Now you know. The system wasn't broken. It was designed this way. You weren't just raised to survive. You were conditioned to serve. Your strengths were rebranded as liabilities. Your edges were softened. Your voice shushed. And every time you complied, you were rewarded. Not for who you are, but for who you agreed to become. But now the illusion is gone. You don't need permission to reclaim yourself. You need conviction. And that conviction starts with a vow, a brutal, unwavering, unshakable vow that your silence ends here. No more apologies for having a spine. No more comfort in being easy to manage. No more waiting for someone to give you back what you were trained to give away. You build your fortress now, brick by brick, word by word, boundary by boundary. And if you're ready, truly ready, prove it. Write the words in the comments. I am the law, not a follower, not a pleaser, not an echo. A system unto yourself, governed not by guilt or fear, but by code and clarity. Let the world call it arrogance. Let them say you've changed. Let them resist. Because if you do this right, they will. That's how you know you're no longer being rewarded for your suppression, but punished for your emergence. Good. Let them punish you. You've been asleep long enough. Now it's time to become dangerous.